People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the wide world of Weingarten.
Welcome back, Wide World of Weingarten, November 30th, Tuesday, 2:40 in Los Angeles. Big college football news. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame for LSU for $100 million. Not the craziest thing I've ever heard for a coach leaving for a bigger program for $100 million. I am surprised, though, that LSU chose to hire Brian Kelly when they could have hired practically anybody to succeed at Orgeron. I don't like Brian Kelly. I think he's a bad coach. He's a bad leader. There's a whole bunch of other reasons that I don't like him, but those are the main ones. And I think it's crazy that LSU's bringing him in from Notre Dame, where he hasn't won a national championship and has no ties to the South or Louisiana for recruiting. And they expect the program's going to compete at the highest levels with the Alabamas and Oklahomas and Georgias of the SEC. I think that's crazy. Beyond all that, though, I do understand from Kelly's point of view. He's from a long line of coaches, and I've been hearing this my whole life that I've been following football, that Notre Dame has restrictions on recruiting, academic restrictions, that they can't bring in players that necessarily Florida State or an LSU could bring in, and that is absolutely me criticizing the academics at Florida State and LSU. And it's much easier to win a national championship when you're Florida State and your guys don't actually ever have to go to class. Notre Dame, you do have to go to class occasionally. Brian Kelly wants to win a national championship. That's all he cares about, is winning. So a university where he can get a higher caliber player is not surprising to see him make this move. It's again, when all you care about is winning, you'll do anything to win, whether it's moving to LSU or putting a 19-year-old on a scissor lift at practice when it's windy out. But Brian Kelly's no stranger to doing what it takes to win. So we'll see what keeps going on in college football. It's pretty interesting. Early bets for the weekend so far. The only thing I bet so far, I bet Jackson State -7, -110 in the SWAC. I think it's the SWAC championship game versus Prairie View. Jackson State -7, my first college bet for the weekend. Then we had Monday Night Football last night. Seahawks lost to Washington 17-15. Almost nothing exciting stood out in the box score. It's now 3 straight losses for the Seahawks, with the 49ers coming up this weekend. Probably the end of the season for the Seahawks. With Washington, on the other hand, Washington gets the Raiders this weekend and a chance to get back to 500. Then they finish the season with 5 straight division games. Cowboys at Eagles, at Cowboys, Eagles at Giants. As crazy as it is to say, Washington has a path to the playoffs with the Raiders and 5 division games left on their schedule. You could play it by betting Washington to make the playoffs. You might get like 4-1, 5-1. But I just bet Washington plus 2.5 this weekend versus the Raiders. Raiders coming off the overtime win, 36 points, 36-33 on the road versus Dallas on Thanksgiving. They do get the extended rest with the weekend off. And Washington's coming in on a short week. They ran like 70 plays on offense, I think. But 2.5, getting 2.5 points with Washington after the big upset for the Raiders, I think it's good. And I think even better if you can do the Wong teaser with Washington, tease them up to 8.5. I used it with the Patriots. Patriots 8.5 versus the Bills next Monday. That's the only Wong I've done so far this week. Then let's see what else we got with playoff stuff. Sorry, I had to update my notes with the playoff stuff coming up. we have 6 weeks left in the NFL regular season, I believe, and every team has 6 games left. Some teams still have a bye week left, but we can start looking at the final stretch of the schedule and pick teams with advantageous or disadvantageous situations. Like I just mentioned, the Washington has 5 division games, and the Raiders, that would be something I consider an advantageous / path to the playoffs situation. Well, a team like the Dolphins currently 5-7, have the Giants bye week and the Jets coming up, and a chance to get back to 500 at 7-7 through 15 weeks, which would be pretty impressive considering they beat the Patriots week 1 and went on a 7-game losing streak to be 1-7 and basically written off. Bounce back, beat the Ravens. They finish the season, if they can beat the Jets, Giants, get back to 7-7. They finish the season at New Orleans, at Tennessee, and then they get a Week 18 rematch at home versus the Patriots, who they beat week 1, like I mentioned. So Dolphins have won 4 straight after losing 7 straight, and could potentially run their win streak to 6. 6 games going into Monday Night Football Week 16 at New Orleans. I mentioned yesterday, Tua has now started 16 NFL games. He has 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 6 rushing touchdowns. He looks pretty good. Completed 80% of his passes on 30+ completions, back-to-back weeks. Now he gets the Jets and the Giants, or the Giants and the Jets, over the next 3 weeks. He had a chance to build up his confidence over some average to pretty bad teams, and the Jets have a pretty bad secondary. So he gets those 2 games over 3 weeks to kind of build up his confidence, and then go into a final stretch run with those last 3 games at the Saints, at Tennessee, and the Patriots. So I was thinking Dolphins make the playoffs 12-1. It's a bit of a stretch still. They're gonna really have to, they're gonna have to win the next 2 games before it's even a remote possibility. But 12-1 might get a little bit of money from me by tomorrow. I haven't bet these yet, but I plan to. Brian Flores, Coach of the Year, 100-1 at BetMGM. I also think that's kind of interesting if they did somehow manage to win 5 more games. Brian Flores almost won last year. He would deserve some consideration. And then I mentioned this before. I mentioned this on the radio when I was on VSiN last night at like 11:30. But as far as Coach of the Year, I mentioned Brian Flores, and Bill Belichick's the favorite in the Coach of the Year market right now. I disagree with that, which is not to say that I don't think Bill Belichick is a great coach. I think he is the greatest coach in modern football. But to call him the Coach of the Year is a little bit insulting, because it implies that there are times when Bill Belichick does not coach at the highest level, and that this year he's doing something above and beyond what he normally does, which is he's the best coach in football. But I think when you look at the Patriots and the way they're playing, and the fact that Belichick is the coach and the general manager, and he's responsible for retooling the entire Patriots roster, and he signed Kendrick Bourne, Matthew Judon, Hunter Henry this offseason. Between the 3 of them, that was $100 million spent. Granted, some of it's funny money that'll never get paid out, but the reported numbers on those contracts are over $100 million. I don't have the guaranteed numbers in front of me, but $100 million in contract between those 3 guys. Then Jalen Mills, Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar, does another $96 million between those 3 guys. So we're looking at almost $200 million invested in 6 free agents. And you look at a couple of the other guys they signed. Van Noy, defensive tackle, I forget his name, was another $10 million. So I mean, we're talking over $200 million invested in free agents this offseason. And then on top of that, Belichick went out and drafted Mac Jones 15th after 3 other quarterbacks had been drafted. 3 other teams all had their chance to take Mac Jones, and decided that Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, and obviously Trevor Lawrence. I don't fault the Trevor Lawrence pick for going first, but The other teams had their opportunities and decided that Trevor Wilson and Trey Lance were better options than Mac Jones. And at the time, it didn't seem crazy, but now Belichick is again looking like a genius, getting his quarterback with the 15th pick. And then Christian Barmore, another player from Alabama, defensive tackle, is contributing and blowing up interior linemen on a regular basis. So I think Belichick deserves General Manager of the Year as opposed to Coach of the Year. It's insulting to call Bill Belichick the Coach of the Year because he's always the best coach in football. So I think Belichick is not deserving of the current 3-1 odds or whatever he's getting. Zach Taylor, on the other hand, took over a Bengals team that was 2-14 his first year. And it's you can't compare the situation in coaching the Bengals versus the Patriots and working with the finest one of the finest franchises in football. But Zach Taylor comes in, goes 2-14 his first year as a first time head coach. Bengals draft Joe Burrows. He develops him, even sticks with Burrow after a torn ACL. Doesn't get fired. Waits for Burrow to come back, get healthy, and here they are now with 7 wins. Just defeated the division rival Steelers 41-10 this last week. Just beat them so bad the game was over at halftime. But I think when you look at Zach Taylor and what he's accomplished in Cincinnati, he's a much better bet for Coach of the Year still, 10-1 odds. If they make a playoff spot, if they make the playoffs, I'm expecting, I guess they'd most likely be a wild card. But if they make the playoffs, that should be enough to get Taylor some serious consideration. If they happen to beat the Ravens and win the division, that would get him even more consideration. I don't know how much of a possibility that is, but also it might all be moot by the end of by the end of the season. If the Cardinals end up winning 13, 14 games, which is not out of the question with their schedule, Kyler Murray comes back healthy. They beat the Bears this weekend. Cardinals get their 10th win. Cliff Kingsbury would likely, it's hard to vote against him. Let's see what he's doing in Arizona with Kyler and with Colt McCoy substituting. But 12, 13 wins should be in the realm of possibility. The remaining games, they'll be favorites in all of them over the Rams at Detroit, Indy, the Colts at Dallas, and Seattle. They'll definitely be favorites in every one of those games. So 14 wins, number 1 seed, not out of the question for Arizona. Arizona Cardinals 4-1 to be the number 1 seed at BetMGM. Also an interesting bet. I think I like that. It's about the same as Cliff Kingsbury's Coach of the Year odds. I would like to see somebody else win Coach of the Year, mostly for betting purposes. And then as far as division stuff, division winners and whatnot, I went through it. Didn't find anything. Didn't find anything super interesting. Welcome back, Wide World of Weingarten. Just took a break. Back with talk about some golf. I said yesterday that they canceled this week's DP World Tour event, and they're playing the South African Open next week. What I meant to say is that they canceled the Alfred Dunhill Championship next weekend, and they're playing the South African Open this weekend, but it's been demoted to a local Sunshine Tour event, and a lot of the expected European players are not entered into this event like they were planning because of the latest COVID travel restrictions. This week they're playing at the Gary Player Country Club in Sun City, which last weekend's event takes place at altitude, although this time it's slightly lower at 4,000 feet compared to last weekend's 5,700 feet in Johannesburg. But at 4,000 feet, the ball's still going to travel about 8-10% farther. So altitude is still going to benefit the biggest hitters. The South African Open was supposed to be part of the DP World Tour, like I mentioned. It got demoted because of the travel restrictions. So there's a whole bunch of players that were expected in this field that are missing. But the remaining ones still make for some decent betting stuff. There's a couple guys I liked. Last year's winner, Christian Benzuti-Hoot, is the favorite again. He's available anywhere from plus 450 to plus 650. I did notice that DraftKings doesn't have odds up on this. Neither does Circa. I'm not sure if Circa plans to put them up or they just haven't yet. FanDuel does have odds on this. They have a whole slew of, top 5, top 10, top 20, top European, all that kind of stuff. But I did notice this event is not available, so it does it did kind of lower my interest in it, especially just because I have less places to bet it as well. But I mentioned one of the other favorites. I've talked about him a couple times on the show so far. But Dean Burmeister is back in the field. He's playing his 5th tournament in 5 weeks. I'm not very interested in him at his current odds. I think it's like 10-1 or something. But I do like Justin Harding at 28-1. I mentioned he's a guy I bet a lot. He finally started to look like his form was returning last weekend at the 3rd round of the Joburg Open. I think he got to -4 before the event got called off. He's 28-1 when I bet him this week. That's relatively high for a guy who was probably 10-1, 15-1 earlier this year after a win in Kenya when they were playing some of these tourist courses in Spain or in the Canary Islands or whatever. That was a while ago. But the other guy I like, J.C. Ritchie at 35-1. He's a guy I haven't bet yet. I'll probably add him to my card though. I've seen his name pop up on a bunch of other people's stuff, and people I respect. So when I see multiple other people on the same guy, usually I'll look at him a little further just to see if I could see what they're seeing. So J.C. Ritchie's played this course 6 times, missed the cut just once. I think he had a couple, high top 10 finishes. So I would also look for the top 10, make the cut odds if those existed. But like I said, this is a very thinly traded market this week, so I've once again limited myself to just a couple outrights. And I mentioned further down the list, Thurston Lawrence this week. He's back available 60-1, 70-1. I don't know if it's necessarily worth a small bet. He did look like he was outpacing the field early last week. Granted, it was a different course, a different city. But if he can maintain his form early, I'd like to see him up near the top again. 60-1, 70-1, not nearly as good as last week's 200-1. And it's very challenging to win back-to-back weeks on any golf tour. But I'm gonna take a little shot, probably $100, $200 at 60-1 or 70-1, whatever I can get, just because I missed it last week, and I'm still a little bit annoyed by that. But I don't know. I think Ritchie and Harding are probably better values. Not necessarily saying Lawrence has much value here, but sometimes you just got to bet your guys. So Harding, Ritchie, Lawrence is my South African Open card to start. And Jackson State, college football, Dolphins to make the playoffs. Dolphins make the playoffs. I think you can get it up 12-1, or you can get Dolphins wild card odds at DraftKings. But I'm gonna have to look for some more futures this week for NFL. I still think there's some more value out there, but that's what I bet in the last 24 hours or so. Couple NFL futures, couple golf futures, and I'll be back tomorrow with top off all the futures and see what else I can find. Thank you for listening.